So the cool thing about watching football is that you A, have fun, most of the time at least, and B, that you get to see some of the world's best players in action. So why not take notes and learn while you watch? Well, if that's your jam, I've done the hard work for you with 24 tips from studying the pros to get you started.
Number 1. La pausa. We're starting off with a big one, a term that's very difficult to explain and even harder to learn. But Xavi is one of the true masters of la pausa, a tactical term that has multiple meanings in football. To break it down in simple language, la pausa could be explained as temporarily slowing down the game and holding on to the ball to wait for new and better options to happen on the field. In many situations, this means that as the player with the ball deliberately delays his pass and holds on to the ball, he will often draw defenders closer to him, which creates space elsewhere that can then be exploited by speeding up the play again, either with passing or dribbling. Another common scenario happens when the player with the ball, again, waits before releasing the ball just long enough for his teammate to be in the absolute perfect position, quite literally pausing the game for a moment. And Xavi is the master of using la pausa. Let's take a look at this goal against United. Most people would let go of the ball now, but Xavi waits and waits, almost making it seem like he's holding on to the ball for way too long. But utilizing la pausa while Vidic also forgets about Pedro, Xavi finds the perfect moment for the perfect pass. Here, another example of la pausa happens in a simple looking midfield setting. Xavi receives the ball, and although a bunch of teammates are making runs, he holds on to the ball, waits for Busquets to create open space before finding Iniesta, who's all by himself. So what does this mean for you? Well, la pausa, when performed correctly, is a way for you to take your playmaking ability to the next level. It's a tool for creating pockets of space on the pitch by strategically slowing down the game before moving it forward. Keep in mind, this requires exceptional football intelligence and lots of confidence and skill, so you actually dare to hold on to the ball for what can seem like an uncomfortably long amount of time. You also need teammates who understand the concept of la pausa. Teammates who can make those runs, fill up the new empty spaces, and have faith they will actually receive the ball from you. Again, la pausa is difficult to explain, even more difficult to master, but watching Xavi consistently execute this skill time and time again, well, it's worth looking into and something every midfielder should aim to learn. And you knowing a thing like this exists already puts you ahead of tons of other players. Now, you just need to start executing. Number 2. Positioning is key. Okay, let's have a look at something super freaking cool. This is a genuine report card of a 14-year-old Xavi Hernandez playing for La Masia. And in between all the small Spanish text, we can see that out of the about 15 different criteria, Xavi has been named excellent in 2 disciplines: ball control and positioning. In fact, the scouting report suggests that positioning is undoubtedly his best quality. He's always where he should be and always offers support and an option for teammates. Remember, this is what a coach or a scout saw in the 14-year-old Xavi, but positioning is without a doubt an attribute he perfected and carried with him throughout his entire career. Great positioning of a center midfielder means that you understand when, where, and how to move on the pitch to make yourself available for a pass, and when to move away from a certain area to create space for your teammates. However, this is unfortunately something a short YouTube video can't fully teach you. But as Xavi has shown, paying attention to how you move when you don't have the ball can become one of your biggest strengths on the pitch. The simple concept of pass and move is a great place to start. After letting go of the ball, always aim to find a new area where your teammate can find you. You can also learn a lot by focusing only on center mids when you watch football on TV and seeing how the best players out there move without the ball, just like Xavi did in his days. And lastly, number 3. Physique matters, size doesn't. Let me try to explain. Xavi has been quoted saying, "Physically I'm limited, but I've survived using my head." And if we look again at the report card of the young Xavi, his balance, speed and flexibility were all marked as average. And in fact, none of his pure physical attributes were better than good. But even as a small player, Xavi has shown the world that the lack of pure size and physical appearance doesn't necessarily mean you can't compete at a high level. As long as you can make up for your lack of explosive, lightning-fast speed by observing and analyzing the game faster than your opponents and thus making faster decisions. actions. You get the point. Now, of course, to compete at a high level, you need to be athletic, specifically in the context of football, with great stamina and at least an average level of pace. You need to be agile, in full control of your own body, and be able to execute high-intensity actions throughout the 90 minutes. And the point I want you to take away here is not to be discouraged if at a young age you lack physical attributes the players around you might possess. It's a common misconception amongst young players that muscles and sheer size equals great physique. And Xavi is a living example of what football-specific athleticism can look like. He had a wonderful low center of gravity and was quite rarely injured despite playing a huge number of games, which, looking from the outside, tells us he's done his share of the right type of strength and conditioning throughout the years. So don't just focus on hitting the bench press unsupervised trying to get buffed just for the sake of it. As a center mid, you're most likely only gonna slow yourself down. Work on football-specific strength and conditioning like Xavi. No need to be a bodybuilder.
Now, if we look at Haaland's goals, he often gets in positions where the finish is relatively straightforward. Some people would even call it easy. But therein also lies his genius, because by having an exceptional understanding of positioning and great anticipation of the game, Haaland manages to know where to be and when. For instance, let's look at his goal here. He's found an open spot in between the centre-back and the full-back where he can call for the ball, but before receiving the pass, he actually looks around a few times, because then he knows he's open and he's got time and space to turn, and then the finish is relatively straightforward for a guy like him. And because of this great anticipation of where the ball will come, Haaland manages to score all these so-called easy goals. But if we look at this goal of his against Liverpool, he actually constantly looks at where Gomez is and manages to play off his shoulder behind him so Gomez can't see him. So Haaland always knows that he's clear and free of him. And then of course he also keeps an eye on the offside line, because he knows that if Minamino manages to square the ball, that will be where the ball will end up. So he waits, stays, and eventually got a super easy goal. Now, there's also this goal for Dortmund, which looks really easy and frankly a little bit lucky. But as you'll learn with this guy, there is no such thing as luck. Because let's slow things down a little bit here. So Haaland sees the cross coming in. He moves to the front post to get either the header in or to clear up space for his midfielder to run into. Okay, he doesn't get it. The ball falls to Royce. And then he's ready. You can see he kind of flinches to get ready for the rebound. Again, nothing happens, but the ball then falls to Guerrero. And here Haaland knows, because he has space, that a shot might be coming and thus a potential rebound. So he falls back to try and beat the offside trap and then simply accelerates before the defenders, because there is a chance there's going to be a potential rebound. Now that means he gets to the ball before the defenders, despite actually being crowded in by 3-4 people. So this anticipation and understanding of where the ball might end up is absolutely key here, proving that with Haaland, luck doesn't exist. So the thing I want you to understand here is to look at where the ball is, but also try and analyze all the possible scenarios of where it might end up. What are the options for your teammates? Now, if one of those scenarios matches a position on the pitch where you can go and be open and free of the defender, then that is where you should go. So try and watch Haaland's matches and analyze how he positions himself, and then also how he understands his teammates, their position, their options with the ball, but also his surroundings. Because then you just yourself might subconsciously start doing this step by step. Now, another great aspect is that young Erling here is a fantastic runner, meaning that his runs are intelligent and thus highly effective. Look at his goal against Tyrol here, where Haaland knows that the midfielder is looking for the deep pass. So Haaland comes deep and the winger gets space in behind him. And then Haaland turns and sprints off the shoulder of the defender to get at the end of the cross. So basically, he manages to drag the defender away with a counter run. He turns, runs into empty space, and it's another easy goal. And actually, you can see the same thing here. There is a long ball, which is not for Haaland, but he sees the empty space in front of him, he sprints into it and is rewarded with the only possible dangerous pass. And finally, there's this great goal for Dortmund, where he's on the verge of being offside, but running off the shoulder behind the defender to be kinda invisible. He's running sideways to stay onside, but until the pass comes, and then he sprints and explodes forward to get essentially in a one-on-one situation with the keeper. And usually, that means a goal. Another great example can be seen here, where Haaland is jogging, and then he sees a potential through ball coming from the flank. So he checks to his left over his shoulder, sees that he's basically all by himself, and then he takes it up a gear to sprint forward. And what I want you to focus on here is to use that awareness you learned from the previous point to spot that open space. And then I want you to start moving towards that open space, but just taking small jogging-like steps before the pass is played. But then after you switch gears and you go full sprint mode, because that means you're already going and you're gonna be more or less impossible to catch. The last bit I want to focus on is Haaland's composure and ability to stay calm. Just look at how many goals he scored with a controlled inside of the foot shot. And that's because Haaland is great at opening up his body to give himself a bigger angle and thus more options in the goal. And he also just has a knack of staying composed and doing the simple thing instead of just blasting it, trying to go for top corner with a fancy shot. For instance, let's take another look at his goal against Cologne, where he's rounded the keeper here, but instead of taking a shot first time when he's off balance, he waits, takes a touch to control the ball despite the angle being a lot worse and the defender rushing back to defend the goal. And then he just calmly slots the ball home with what essentially is a ground pass. I probably would have missed that because I'm not as calm. And one more thing that helps him is being clever by using his body. Let's take another look at the other Augsburg goal here, because you can see that he's through, he's away, but he also cuts into the pitch and actually takes a few touches to keep the ball in control. But in doing that, he has to slow down a bit, allowing the defender to get close. But that's kind of okay for Haaland, because as you can see, he knows that by putting his body between the defender and the ball, if the defender touches him, he's gonna get a penalty. So by being clever, he buys himself time to control the ball, to set himself up, to make it as simple and as cool as humanly possible.
Number 1. Change of pace. Okay, let's start with the obvious. Neymar is one of the best one-on-one players in the world. He's an absolute machine in taking on players and getting past them, oftentimes beating multiple defenders in one go. Now, it would be easy to just say, yeah, he's very skillful, fast, and creative. But you're not gonna learn much from that. Instead, what you should take away from watching Neymar fly past defenders is his change of pace. Not always, but oftentimes when facing an opponent, Neymar will first slow down his speed, which simultaneously slows down the speed of the defender in front of him. And then, bam! All of a sudden, he either just dinks the ball forward a few meters, whips out a step-over combo or a body feint and explodes to full speed. And the key here is not just taking on players only using one gear. Otherwise, you're also letting the defender to be at his maximum speed at all times. The smarter way, even if you're not as fast as Neymar, is to first slow down your pace as you're approaching the opponent, and then going from 0 to 100 with the mindset of trying to catch the defender off guard. Remember, most of the times the defender has his side or back towards the running direction, so it will take more effort from him to all of a sudden turn around and start speeding up. So next time you're at the training ground, try utilizing the simple concept of change of pace. Again, I repeat, even if you're not a fast player, this is a technique you can use to beat defenders and is one of the tools Neymar constantly utilizes when taking on defenders. Yes, he's got the skills and technique to do many incredible things, but the change of pace is something we can all strive to learn from him. Number 2. Playmaking ability. Neymar is a deadly goal scorer and a threat to every defense in the world, but his playmaking ability often goes under the radar. The further his career has gone, the more Neymar has also started to create chances and provide key assists for his teammates. And you might be asking yourself, what can I learn from this? Should I just create chances? I know, as with anything, it's easier said than done. But as a winger, or whatever Neymar's pretty much free role could be described as, you should understand that besides just scoring goals, you will be a much more valuable player if you're also able to create play and hit those key passes in the final third. Now, similar to Messi, Neymar is also a player who draws defenders close to him whenever he has the ball, oftentimes more than just one defender. And this means there's extra space somewhere else on the pitch. Now, Neymar is finally starting to prosper in finding those empty areas. And since 2013, no player has recorded more Champions League assists than Neymar. No one. So what does this really mean for you? Well, if you're a player who likes to hold on to the ball like Neymar, understand that by drawing defenders close to you, some other areas are being left empty. And if you can penetrate those pockets with accurate passes, you will be that much more valuable for your team. So while holding on to the ball and taking on defenders, lift your head up, be aware of the runs your teammates are making, and start challenging yourself to provide those through balls that split defenses, just like Neymar. And lastly, number 3, unbreakable mentality. Let me explain. Whether you love him or hate him, I think we can all agree Neymar has been through a lot. Not only is he the #1 target for every defender and takes a proper beating every time he steps on the pitch, but Neymar has also experienced a lot of major disappointments in front of the entire world. Look, he's not perfect, and some of his antics on the pitch are not what we wanna see. But Neymar has proven time and time again that he's not afraid to silence the haters. Honestly, by just being himself. We all remember the tragic injury at the 2014 World Cup that crushed his dream of winning a World Cup at home in Brazil. And most people would totally crumble from the pressure and scrutiny this guy has to face every single day. But Neymar doesn't slow down. He's still doing ridiculous stepovers and rainbow flicks. He will still fight until the last minute of every game. And if a player whose every step both on and off the pitch are being watched, commented and criticized by the entire world on a daily basis can still keep his head high and continue doing things his way, well, you have no excuses either. So no matter what the world throws at you, no matter how much people try to crush your dreams and tell you that you've completely lost it, no matter how many times people try to write you off because of silly mistakes or impulsive actions on the pitch, it's never over until you yourself stop believing in what you're doing. Being Neymar is probably not easy, but he's doing things his own way and won't let anyone break his spirit.
The first thing that Musiala specializes in is dropping down. Now, he's a player that's often given a pretty free role because he's so good at finding space. And he utilizes this skill by dropping down to receive the ball further back on the pitch. And also by doing so, he helps his team to get out of pressure and then switch the ball from the defensive line to an offensive position. And you can do that pretty easily as well. Now, there are two things that are important to do this. First, you need to orientate yourself and look for open spaces. Try to predict where the ball will go and then find an open space to move into. Next, you need a good first touch, so you can turn around and face the opponent's goal instead of your own. That's how you progress things. Now, these two things are stuff that you can practice on your own. Specifically, you can practice doing this outside touch that Musiala also does when he receives the ball. It's a really easy way to quickly beat a defender and get out of the intense pressure that you will most likely experience when the opponent realizes that you like to drop down. Secondly, we have La Croeta. And if you want to truly learn this skill, Musiala is one of the guys to look at, as he's mastered it and uses it a lot, just like Michael Laudrup and Andres Iniesta has done before him. Now, most of you guys probably know how to do it, but nailing it with the speed, the timing, and the precision you need is a completely different ballgame. Now, Musiala doesn't seem to think about doing La Croeta when he does it, he just instinctively pulls it out of the bag. And to get on his level, you need to know the feel and the rhythm of the croqueta. It's a pretty simple skill where you move the ball from one foot to the other with the insteps in this very fluid motion. So therefore, the key parts of the skill is the direction of the first touch and the length or speed of the second touch. And to get good at it, you need to practice it, potentially doing it, beating a couple of cones in a drill like this. Now here you put some cones in a line and just do it over and over again. Focus on the fluidity, focus on the speed, focus on the control. And if you do this for 5 to 10 minutes in every practice session, you'll start to do the skill in games automatically as well, because it'll seem like a natural way for you to dribble around obstacles. And who knows, maybe you'll look as stylish as Musiala when you do it. Now, the third and final thing you guys should take note of when you're watching Musiala is his ability to link up with his teammates. And even though Musiala is a very effective dribbler, he still passes the ball more than he dribbles. And you need to do that as well. However, Musiala has a few specific ways of linking up with his teammates. The first way is to pass the ball sideways on his first touch when he's facing his own goal. And in this situation, he will most likely have a player right behind him, and doing a quick 1-2 with his first touch is a great way to beat this immediate pressure without risking possession by turning around, because he doesn't know what's behind him. You just lay it off to the side or behind him, 1-2, then he's facing the right way. And the second way he links up with his teammates is whenever he's close to the goal. Especially when Musiala attacks from the wing, he likes to play a ball to a player in the middle of the pitch and then attempts to make a run in behind the defensive line so he can receive either a timed or a lob pass from his teammate. And I think that if you try some of these things out on your own, especially if you have trouble linking up with your team, it might add a little bit of that feeling of team synergy. Use your teammates, play each other better instead of just trying to dribble through the entire defense. Luka Modric. One of the most basic, but also one of the most important parts of football is passing. Especially for midfielders, this skill is pretty important because they have to set the pace of the game, and since they get a lot of touches on the ball, midfielders need to be able to have great distribution. In other words, they need to be reliable. Luka Modric is a master of both short and long passes, which shows in his high pass completion numbers, 91%, which, given his high involvement and many progressive passes, is actually quite good. Modric, in other words, manages to always be around when important plays are being made, and for that, you need to rely on your passing skill and, more importantly, your precision. The best way to start improving, if you're alone at least, is actually really simple. Find something that the ball can rebound back off. It can be a wall, a bench laying down, a fence, or whatever you have close by. A good way to start off is passing the ball at your object, could be the wall, and then when the ball is rebounded, you take a touch to set yourself up for the next pass. You should switch between legs between each pass so you get good with both your right and your left. Now, when you're comfortable doing this drill, you can make it a bit more difficult for yourself by skipping the touch and just passing it on your first touch. Even though Luka Modric has world-class passing, it's his dribbling and ball control in tight spaces that really makes him stand out. Modric is a master of beating intense pressure with his wonderful touch and his quick thinking, but all of these flashy ways to beat the pressure wouldn't be possible without great ball control. So let's look at how we can practice that. Of course, this can be done in many ways, but in general, the more time you spend with the ball, the better your control will be. However, a dribbling course of some sort is always a good way to start, as it forces you to control the ball in different scenarios. You can set up this little game where you dribble through some cones using different dribbling techniques. Now, other than doing the drill with higher speed, you can also challenge yourself a little more by ending the drill with a pass into a small goal or between some cones. And actually, that's the whole point of dribbling. Progressing with the ball and then creating space for yourself to either shoot or put your teammate in a really good position with a pass. The third and final thing to learn from Luka Modric is, of course, the trivela. Now, Modric is one of the masters of this pass, and as we saw in the quarterfinal between Real Madrid and Chelsea, it can be very, very effective. Now, you might think that the only purpose of the trivela is to look cool, because why won't you just pass it with your weak foot instead? But there is actually a reason for the trivela working. Because when you're doing it, you kind of create this unique trajectory for the ball, which in some cases can't be done simply by passing with your weak foot. Also, it might surprise the opponent and therefore they might not be as ready to intercept the pass, like we saw against Chelsea. When first trying out the trivela, it can be hard to create enough power for the pass or shot to work. But the key component here is to lock your angle to create the necessary power, and then follow through with your foot all the way through the ball. And if your ankle is sloppy, you'll lose the ability to really direct the ball where you want it. Other than just practicing this in front of a goal or just trying to hit a target, you can set up a little drill to challenge yourself even further. It can be any kind of dribbling course, but an example could be first beating a cone with a skill move like a step over, croqueta, or just a simple body feint, and then setting up a small goal or target to hit with the trivela pass afterwards.
So the first thing I want to take a look at is Mbappe's speed, obviously, because he's fast. And I'll take a look at how on earth he manages to reach that monster speed and what you can do to do the same in another video. But one of the things Mbappe does really well is that he likes to run at defenders at a relatively high speed, which in turn gives him a lot of momentum because he's going forward, running pretty fast, and the defenders will most likely be either standing still or even going a little bit backwards, putting all the initiative and the momentum on Mbappe's half. And oftentimes, a small poke or even just a slightly longer touch around them will be enough to beat them. And because you're going so fast, if they want to stop you, even the slightest touch or shoulder barge or pull will most likely win you a free kick. But then again, on the other hand, you're so fast that they're not even gonna get near you. Right? Right? Okay. Now, naturally, the best way to train this would be to have 2 or 3 defenders to just run rings around. But since I guess not everyone will have that in their training bag, you can also train this alone. Just set up some cones or some obstacle going towards the goal that you can then weave around, going at high speed, but without going so fast that you actually lose control of the ball. And then it's all about coming at the cone, high speed, oi, little touch around, or maybe through here, high speed, oi, and then you finish off the whole thing. Let me go back to you. Now, I realize that this drill is relatively simple, but if you do it, repeat it enough times, and you actually go at a high speed while practicing keeping the ball close, I think it's gonna give you the confidence that with time, you can take on defenders at high speed because you know the ball is gonna be glued to your feet. And then you can just go in for the kill. Young Mbappe, that was tough. Now the last piece here is that Kylian likes to do his skills. And of course, I could just tell you to go and practice a million different skills that you could then whip out in matches. But instead, I actually was watching Kylian and I noticed this quite peculiar step over skill. Because most people, I guess, when they do step overs, would step over the ball with one foot and then move it out with the other foot. However, this variation, you step over the ball with one foot, then shift your feet and move it out with the same foot that you just stepped over with. Now it's a little bit tricky to get under your skin, but essentially you need to step over the ball, plant your foot, find your balance with the other foot, and then quickly shift your feet so you can come in, tap it out with the same foot again. So just set up a cone, run at it, execute like this, boom, until you have it. Because then you can take it into trainings and you know what to do to the defender, roast him.
My friends, Benzema is hot. Everything he touches turns to gold. He's been scoring goals with his feet, his head, whatever. And today we are going to talk about how to get in the flow state, how to be in the zone, because it's no coincidence that he has scored 2 hat-tricks back to back in the Champions League. The very first thing you need to do is stay calm. Get your mind right. Once you are calm and cool and believe what you can do, whatever you want to do, you show active faith. Active faith means action. That means you believe you're going to score 3 goals, so you start taking the shots, which is the third point, which is to take risks. Because once you get that, once you have belief and you start showing belief in yourself, things will start to change when you start to take the risks, and then it's all on you. You've all seen players in their prime running through guys, running through players, scoring goals left and right no matter what they do. Lewandowski, Messi, all these guys have done it, and it's a matter of simply changing your state of mind and then showing active faith behind that and not giving up. After you've got your flow and your faith, the next thing that's gonna make things way easier for you is understanding your teammates and them understanding you. So it's no coincidence, like we said, that he's scoring back-to-back, but this streak is going to continue as long as his teammates continue to realize that he is in the zone. And you can do this for yourself on your own team by getting to know your teammates and getting to know the players, and then letting them know, hey, I want the ball to my feet. Hey, I like the ball over the top. Whatever it is, you've got to let them understand. And once that happens, everything will change. Look at the goals when Modric and Vinicius are involved, and at the balls, they seem like they're just glued perfectly to his head. All he has to do is head it or tap it in. It almost seems like they have magical telepathic powers like me and J-Mike do whenever I want something to eat. Now, some of you might be saying, well, on 2 of those hat tricks, the goalie messed up a couple times. Well, of course that happened. Of course it does, because like we said, if you're in the flow, your teammates understand you, then things will bounce your way. Guys like Mendy and Donnarumma are exquisite goalkeepers, and he still found a way to capitalize on their mistakes. And the only way you do that is if you do not give up on any of your balls. That's exactly what gave him the opportunity to do that. Now, on Donnarumma, maybe it was a foul, but it doesn't matter because he put himself in that position, and that's exactly what you can do. At the end of the day, a goal is a goal. And if that's the little amount that you have to do to capitalize, then you better put in the effort.
So, there is a lot to learn from watching the world's best players, but which other players should we take a look at and learn from? Let me know in the comment section right down below. Of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel and you've liked the video. And with that, I'll be signing off. Cheerio.